My name's Lindsay Judge, and I'm Research Director of the Resolution Foundation. The UK has huge strengths as an economy. Think about our world-class universities or cutting-edge industries such as pharmaceuticals. But for the last 15 years, the UK economy has been in relative decline. Our productivity has grown at only half the rate of other advanced economies, and average wages have flatlined as a result. That has cost the average worker over £10,000 this year in lost wages, compared to where they would stand if wages had grown at their previous rate. Add to that the fact that the UK is the most unequal large economy in Europe, and it's no surprise that low-income families in Britain are 27% worse off than their counterparts in France and Germany today. Over the last 3 years, the Resolution Foundation has been working with the Centre for Economic Performance at the London School of Economics on the Economy 2030 inquiry. Together, we've been exploring why the UK is a stagnation nation and developing a comprehensive agenda for change to boost growth and drive down inequality too. Our conclusion? Britain needs a new economic strategy that goes beyond nostalgia and wishful thinking, and instead is serious about the nature and scale of the challenge. Nowhere is that truer than when it comes to our second cities in the UK. Britain has manufacturing strengths, but is the second biggest services exporter in the world, behind the United States. Places like Birmingham and Manchester should be hives of activity, full of highly skilled workers and cutting-edge services firms, but they're not. Instead, both cities have below average productivity, low investment, and a graduate premium that is little different from their surrounding regions. Turning the fortunes of our second cities around is crucial, not just for their residents, but also for the nation. Successfully reducing the productivity gaps between London and Manchester and Birmingham, so they are similar with Paris, Lyon and Toulouse, would boost national output by 1% a year and transform the living standards of near 6 million people living in those areas, and that would raise median incomes by £2,400 a year across Greater Manchester and by £1,700 across Birmingham. So how can that be achieved? We know that highly productive firms generally choose to locate in places where there's a large pool of highly skilled workers. But in this respect, our second cities do not perform particularly well. Birmingham has the lowest share of graduate workers of any major UK city. And with a graduate share of just 39%, Manchester lags behind places like Bristol, like Glasgow and London on this measure too. We estimate that Birmingham and Manchester together need around 345,000 more graduate workers to provide the skills that high-paying, knowledge-intensive firms need. Realistically, only a small share of this can come from upskilling the existing adult population in those cities. Instead, the bulk of this much-needed highly skilled workforce will come from inward migration from other parts of the region and nation, alongside better retention of recent graduates. But that could be different in the future. If Manchester and Birmingham schools performed better, far more of this much-needed talent could be homegrown. The leading role graduate workers will play in a higher productivity UK does not mean we should take our eye off the rest of the workforce. In a flourishing economy, well-paid sectors such as financial and business services should be employing almost 3 times as many people with below degree-level qualifications than they are currently. So why aren't they? Well, because our education and training systems do not support workers to develop the right skills in the first place. For example, 30% of 18-year-olds are not in education or training in the UK today, many more than in comparator countries. When it comes to higher education, the Robbins principle ensures that all qualified people who wish to progress to university are able to find a place. This principle is entirely absent for vocational training. Instead, the funding for further education over the age of 18 is capped, and that needs to change. An apprenticeship place should be available for every qualified candidate, and we need demand-led funding for all forms of further education. And there are other systemic problems in the labour market we need to address. Good work is the bedrock of a fair economy, and a key part of that agenda is the minimum wage. It's hard to overstate what a policy success the minimum wage has been. Introduced cautiously, ramped up recently, it has driven down rates of low pay over the last 20 years, especially to the benefit of young, female and/or ethnic minority workers. But we need to go further and set the minimum wage on an even more ambitious trajectory with a 73% of average earnings endpoint kept in mind. And alongside low pay, we also have to tackle poor conditions in the workplace. Over the last 2 decades, lower earners' job satisfaction levels have fallen even as the minimum wage has risen. Work, for many, is increasingly characterised by precarity. There are 1.2 million zero-hours contract workers in the UK today. Half of shift workers get less than a week's notice of changes to their hours. And in the absence of a decent sick pay system, many low-paid workers have to live on £44 a week when they are too ill to work. We need better national rules and regulations to ensure that those on the lowest earnings enjoy the same rights that higher-paid workers take for granted. But we also need to innovate institutionally to protect worker rights still further. We know there are problem sectors in the UK economy where issue builds on top of issue, and social care is a perfect case in point. Our research suggests that minimum wage underpayment is rife in the social care sector, that workloads are often dangerous, and that pay progression is minimal. We need sector-specific good work agreements negotiated between employer and employee bodies to tackle the problems in sectors like this, alongside a new single enforcement body to robustly enforce labour market rights for all. A good work strategy would benefit workers in all parts of the country, and so too would more investment in infrastructure and the public realm. Birmingham, for example, urgently needs a mass transit system. Half of the area's workers cannot reach the central business district within 45 minutes today. But we should be open-eyed about the scale of the investment needed. This would require doubling the size of Birmingham's metro network and improving its bus routes at a cost of £5.4 billion by 2040. To put that into context, that vital investment is bigger than the entire Levelling Up Fund, which currently totals £4.8 billion. Overall, though, the Economy 2030 inquiry shows there's no excuse for fatalism. Other countries do better than us when it comes to growth and inequality, meaning the UK has huge catch-up potential. And we don't have to be best in class, as rich as America or as equal as Scandinavia. Just moving to a situation where the UK matches the average income and inequality of peers such as Australia and Canada, France and Germany would see the typical UK household be £8,300 a year better off as a result. Finally, if we want to boost growth and improve the prospects of workers in local areas, we have to face up to the fact that the UK is a highly centralised economy. Local leaders can only go so far in setting priorities for growth or reducing inequalities for their residents today. If we want to see the UK take off economically, and we really do, we need to give our local leaders the political and fiscal powers to drive the long-term and strategic change that the Economy 2030 inquiry shows is so long overdue.